Good morning and welcome to the Tax Credit and Community Economic Development Capacity Building Program Overview webinar. My name is Melissa Latham. I'm the Director of Communications and Policy at CDFA. Thank you so much for joining us today. We anticipate that this morning's presentation will run from now until about 11:30 in the morning, and we anticipate that that also includes answering your questions along the way. So this morning, we're focused on providing you with a brief overview of the Community Development Finance Authority for those of you who might not be familiar, as well as how we work with organizations throughout the life cycle of their project. And then we're going to dive into how the tax credit works and program details for the tax credit and capacity building programs, including eligible applicants, funding priorities, and key dates. We are recording today's session and we'll share it along with links to resources in the coming days. If you have questions, please use the Q&A box to post those questions so that we can keep track and ensure that we're answering them. And if you haven't already, if you wouldn't mind taking a moment to share your name, the organization that you're here representing today in the chat, we'd really appreciate that. And without further ado, I'll pass this over to our Executive Director, Katie Easterly Marte, who will go over information on our organization, CDFA.
Great. Thank you so much, Melissa. And good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us, especially on this snowy morning. The Community Development Finance Authority, CDFA, is a statewide community and economic development entity, and we serve all of New Hampshire. We're state chartered, we're independent, and we're a nonprofit. Like other state authorities, such as New Hampshire Housing or the Business Finance Authority, our board is appointed by the governor. During this portion of our presentation, my goal is to provide you an overview of CDFA, describe our funding and technical assistance ecosystem, and provide some examples of how our work touches down in New Hampshire's communities. Our mission is to maximize the value and impact of community development, economic development, and clean energy initiatives throughout the Granite State. We see a future where New Hampshire's communities are economically and socially resilient. They reflect and respect their natural surroundings and are places where people want to live, work, and play. Our overall mission is to meet the evolving community economic development needs of New Hampshire's communities. To support these evolving needs, we provide a variety of financial resources, including the competitive deployment of grants, loans, and tax credit equity. Our staff provide technical assistance to prospective applicants from communities, nonprofit organizations, and for-profit businesses. We work with applicants to understand your project, align that project with the different funding that we have here at CDFA, make sure that you can navigate our application and review process, and connect you with other potential funding that we know of that may not be at CDFA. Our impact is seen in revitalized downtowns, high-quality childcare facilities, renovated housing, clean energy projects, business expansion to provide jobs, and a healthy and vibrant nonprofit sector. CDFA's resources enable our partners to identify a community need, explore ways to meet that need, and ultimately develop and implement a solution. We are dedicated to supporting you, our partners, in this work, and have resources throughout the project development ecosystem. This is the project development ecosystem. It encompasses all of the funding at CDFA. We think of this as a beginning to end of a project. So in the beginning, that's the concept initiation, where you as the project sponsor are thinking about your project. You need support for developing the capacity of your organization, potentially for implementing that project. And you're starting to really consider that innovative new idea that's going to change your community. Following that, in the planning and development, that's when the project's really starting to take shape. You may need resources to support architectural and engineering studies, market studies, to think about an existing building and what kind of energy needs it has. The resources in the planning and development phase of this ecosystem, including planning grants, pre-development loans, and energy and community facility assessments, will help you with those activities. Finally, the vast majority of our resources are in the implementation. In implementation, we have the community development block grants. Those are federal funds from HUD. We do have a separate workshop on those resources, and we'd love you to check out that as well. We have the tax credits, which we'll talk about today in earnest. We have clean energy loans and community development loans. Also, throughout the life of our work with you, we provide engagement support, including support for network building, asset management, data and outcome analysis, and we provide technical assistance. In addition to those mainstay resources at CDFA, we also have special allocations. These are one-time or pilot program funds that provide the opportunity for strategic investments in New Hampshire communities. Here are the current special allocations that we're administering. The Council on Housing Stability, the Community Navigator Pilot Program, which is designed to reduce barriers to accessing critical resources for small business owners, particularly those that are owned by women, socially and economically disadvantaged, and underserved entrepreneurs. We also have the Recovery Housing Program. This is similar to the Community Development Block Grant, but it's a pilot of program, federal resources that are looking to help build permanent, stable housing for individuals in recovery. We have approximately $2 million of resources to support acquisition and construction of recovery housing. We also have family-based childcare. This is to support family-based childcare providers, either those that are in business to build their business and create a healthier revenue stream and support for the children they're serving, or for new potential family-based childcare providers to start so that they have the supports. We also just are in the midst of reviewing applications for the Community Center Investment Program. We recently accepted applications for the final round of that program, and we'll be announcing those recommendations in the next few months. If you do have a community center program, though, that wasn't ready for the community center program, the tax credit program is a great way to consider the resources that you need to support your community center. Throughout the last fiscal year, CDFA made 97 investments in community-based programs. That invested nearly $30 million into community development, economic development, and clean energy projects throughout New Hampshire. In 2023, CDFA's investments resulted in a reported impacts to nearly 41,000 people, 203 housing units, 241 small businesses, and more than 13,000 square feet of space developed or rehabilitated. In addition, business donors, and those are donors who are very invested and connected to the tax credit program, there were 122 of them who were engaged and ensuring that these incredible missions were met. Part of ensuring that we can do this work is to build the capacity of our partners. The capacity building program is set up to just do that. It's a subset of the tax credit program, and it provides resources to strengthen nonprofits and to build their capacity to specifically advance a community economic development or an infrastructure project that will support the needs of vulnerable community members. We seek to support our partners and their ability to achieve your mission, build your community, and really fund that strategic initiative at a critical juncture. One example of an applicant that we supported is Overcomers Refugee Services in Concord. The organization received a capacity building tax credit over 2 years to deepen their capacity to meet their mission. Their mission is to help other refugees to become trained, employed, housed, and contributing citizens of New Hampshire. The improvements that were supported by this award include supporting internal systems and training so that they could better deliver their current case management and client support programs. That included job placement, support for starting a small business, and helping people to find stable housing. It is likely that a number of these efforts could result in the need for a physical space or engage in an infrastructure project, at which Overcomers would come back to CDFA and look for other resources to support their work. Another example of a capacity building applicant and award within our communities was to try a new and innovative approach to community economic development. And this started in the city of Lebanon. In 2019, CDFA provided a capacity building grant to the city of Lebanon, allowing the development of a community power aggregation and business plan. This was a plan to think about how community power could really come to fruition in the city of Lebanon, and for the city to shift to renewable energy resources. It was essentially the first community power pilot in New Hampshire. A few years later, though, there's an incredible collaboration and with the use of consulting resources, the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire was formed. Now it's not only Lebanon, but 21 member communities and 1 member county. The coalition supports the development and implementation of community power programs through shared back office supports, education, advocacy, and other resources. CDFA's resources helped Lebanon Community Power go from an idea to an asset in the community, provided organizational infrastructure that was required to develop community power. This evolved into a multi-community statewide effort, and we think that it will have impacts for years to come. In addition to investing in capacity, we invest in community facilities. 100 Nights provide shelter and crisis-related services to those at risk or experiencing homelessness in the Monadnock region in New Hampshire. The organization provides year-round services, and it currently operates, well, prior to the building of this beautiful new building you can see here, it operated in 3 separate locations throughout Keene. To more efficiently and effectively serve individuals and families at risk of or experiencing homelessness, 100 Nights decided that it really needed to build a comprehensive new building. They utilized the Community Development Block Grant, tax credit resources, and alongside new market tax credits, which CDFA does not administer, and a capital campaign. All those resources together helped them to build a new 48-bed emergency shelter and a resource center. The new building provides a central permanent home for safe and accessible emergency services, as well as case management to individuals and families throughout the region. Another example of a community facility is in Plymouth. We aim to provide opportunities for families and individuals within our communities to thrive. One way that works is through affordable quality childcare. Mid-State Health Center is a federally qualified community health center. They recognized a significant demand from their patients, from their staff, for high demand, high quality, affordable childcare. At the time in which they applied for the funds, the health center was providing childcare services for 18 children at a leased space. CDFA supported the Plymouth, the Mid-State Health to do a feasibility study to determine whether they could increase the services they're providing. They created a vision to deliver affordable quality childcare for their employees through tax credits, a community development block grant, including a feasibility study, and then implementation dollars. On the block grant side, they actually received 2 implementation grants, one from community facilities and one from economic development. They were able to open this facility in 2022, which is pictured here. It enabled the organization to increase enrollment significantly to serve 60 children. The majority of the children served are from low and moderate income households, which is a requirement of the block grant program. They were also able to retain 6 jobs and create 8 new jobs at the center, which was a total of 14 permanent full-time jobs. This is a great example of really understanding that there's a need that exceeds the facility that exists, and using our feasibility resources to really understand how they could build this beautiful new facility. In addition, we provide significant capital to support the creation and renovation of affordable housing in New Hampshire. This capital comes in many forms, including the tax credit program, which invested in this recent project that was developed by NeighborWorks Southern New Hampshire, and it's in Manchester. It's the redevelopment and preservation of housing on the west side of Manchester. We're going to hear more from their executive director, Robert Torney, about how the project demonstrated a strong community benefit, and it contributed to the revitalization of this neighborhood and created some much needed affordable housing in the city of Manchester. We have a short video for you to see.
Apparently the technical gods don't want us to be taking a look at that video. I will share a link to that in the chat, though. It's not letting me launch it. Sorry about that, Katie.
Not at all. So you'll see that video in the chat, and love for you to check that out after the presentation. But we'll move on to thinking about revitalizing downtowns. Many People on this webinar are committed to helping communities revitalize their downtowns and village center. This is where economic development can really have a significant impact. We have some amazing town centers and city centers here in New Hampshire. In Franklin, CDFA invested first in facade improvements. We invested in affordable housing, energy efficiency, nonprofit capacity, and economic development projects. Most recently, to help a public-private partnership that created the first whitewater park in New England. CDFA's funds leveraged millions of dollars in additional public and private investment into this downtown. The investments are attracting new businesses, additional private housing development, expanded tourism, and a growing tax base in one of New Hampshire's most challenged former mill towns. We have what's called community progress indicators. They're on our resource website, which you'll hear more about shortly, but they allow us to understand how demographics in a community are changing. And in Franklin, the efforts of more than a decade of economic development have really started to shift the needle for this community, positively impacting those social economic indicators that are tracked by the community progress indicators. So what does all this sort of come together to be? And we really look to support individual nonprofits, municipalities, and businesses to come together to build vibrant communities. The end result of CDFA's investment ecosystem is those strong, vibrant places. We make investments that create and strengthen a community's sense of place, and we do this through an integrated, holistic community economic development partnership. A great example of this is the city of Laconia. Over the past decade, CDFA has made significant investments to help this community meet basic human needs, build local capacity and resiliency, and increase economic success. A sample of our investments in Laconia include, in the middle picture here, facility improvements for the Boys and Girls Club of Central New Hampshire, where they were able to expand services, including during the COVID pandemic. Assisting the Lakes Region Mental Health, which you can see the brick building on the bottom here, to consolidate its facilities into one central location to help improve access to its mental health services and meet a growing demand for those services. The Colonial Theater, renovating a cornerstone downtown arts and cultural venues. The Colonial Theater and the Belknap Mill, two of those buildings in downtown Laconia. And then technical assistance grants to support the Belknap Economic Development Corporation to boost their ability to support small and local businesses and also to take on these significant projects like the Colonial Mill. These investments support critical human needs, create new opportunities for area residents, and create a healthy and vibrant community. We're really proud to be part of this work in Laconia, and we look forward to working with you. At this time, George Hunton, our Director of Tax Credits, will take on the presentation and start with how specifically you work with CDFA as you consider a tax credit application. So George.
Good morning, Katie.
Thank you
Thank
very
you very
much.
much. Morning, everybody. I think we have, I see at least 75 people here, and we'd like to welcome you all here to this presentation. I hope that you'll enjoy this presentation today and learn a lot about the tax credit program, and certainly enough to come back again for our application workshop on Thursday. But just one thing to mention before we went on, before Melissa had mentioned that the video will be in, you'll have access to that video. They'll be sending a follow-up email. You will be seeing quite a few slides today where there might be additional information involved, and any kind of additional information, i.e. the application and program guide and other helpful resources, will be provided within that email. So if there is something you see today and you're looking for more information, you will definitely get more information after the workshop in an email. So why don't we get started in terms of working with CDFA? And one thing that Katie mentioned earlier, she was talking about the ecosystem and how CDFA works with your organization from concept initiation to implementation of your workshop, and also into sustainability. And through all those phases of the program, CDFA does its best to engage with organizations who participate. We offer we support our community partners well beyond the deployment of resources. We're dedicated to ensuring the long-term success of the organizations, and we provide ongoing technical assistance. And we assist with network building, asset management, compliance, as well as analyzing data and outcomes. As far as technical assistance across all our programs, we offer technical assistance, advice, application guidance, compliance support, and connections to other funders. We work closely with our partners to find creative solutions and offer guidance on project development, strategy, planning, implementation, and finance, amongst other topics critical to successful community economic development efforts. So again, in this tax credit process, this is we'll be there to provide technical assistance for you along the way. We'll also helpful with network building. Successful community economic development efforts require a broad strategy to investments that revolve around the people living and working in our communities. Supporting these strategies requires comprehensive community-based networks. CDFA is focused on helping partners make meaningful connections that build collaboration and capacity while maximizing impact and unlocking the potential within our community. As far as asset management, one thing you will learn about along the way is we do everything through our grants management system, and that's where you'll be writing your application. And this is something that you'll need to be aware of. All your information will be in there, and that is going to have all the details of your project from beginning to end. And we will help you manage that along the way. That can be a little intimidating for new users, but again, we're here to help you with that. And finally, with data and outcome analysis, we are a data-driven organization. We'll be using data, which you will see tomorrow or on Thursday in the application workshop, where we'll use data made available through community progress indicators that you'll be able to use in your application, and that will help you. So again, we will be with you in all these stages of the application. So we work closely with potential applicants during the pre-application phase, where we are now, to understand their needs and align those needs with our technical assistance and financing resources, to understand other potential sources of support, as well as help strengthen the project's capacity for success by addressing any potential challenges early on. Once we go through this, and we'll also have our application meeting on Thursday, we'll provide the opportunity for organizations with potential projects to meet with CDFA staff in advance of pursuing an application within our programs. We'll be sharing instructions on how to request a pre-application meeting for the tax credit and community economic development capacity building programs when we send follow-up materials later this week. We have a resource hub. CDFA's resource hub provides increased access to program-related information and resources for our partners. The resource hub is an easy-to-navigate online platform that guides partners through the application and implementation phases of all of CDFA's programs. Partners using the resource hub can expect to find guidance on CDFA program objectives and eligibility, the application process, as well as how to successfully implement projects leveraging our resources. Again, we provide ongoing technical assistance, and it includes technical assistance from concept initiation through project implementation. We'll be here for you all throughout your project. Again, we're just a phone call away. So one thing I'd like to emphasize at this point is our grant writing assistance program. We offer grant writing support. So the grant writing assistance program is designed to help smaller organizations with limited capacity and/or experience to obtain the assistance of a professional grant writer who can help develop a strong and viable CDFA tax credit or community economic development capacity building program application. Additional objectives of the grant writing assistance program include cultivating a pipeline of viable applications for CDFA resources, helping the successful applicant build transferable skills and experience to submit grant applications to businesses, foundations, government agencies, and other institutions, and advancing CDFA's goal of increasing access to resources. So applicants who apply for the grant writing assistance program can apply for up to $2,500 to hire a grant writer should they need additional capacity, language access, or other technical support to successfully submit an application. CDFA will accept applications up to January 31st, and if you need the help, we can help hook you up with a grant writing consultant. If you are successful, you can use a consultant that you're familiar with, or we could certainly help you choose one as well. We have a list of grant writers available. And again, all these links and the documentation will be followed over email. We really encourage you, if you're a small organization, to get in touch with us. We would always like to speak to you first before you would apply for grant writing assistance. This isn't really for large organizations that already have that capacity. But if you're very small, we've found out over the years, how much effort it takes to write an effective application, and that the smaller organizations really, really do need help. So if you are one of those organizations, we encourage you to look into the grant writing assistance program and follow up, and most definitely give us a call. So as we go through the workshop, you will have an application and program guide, and this is another link that you will have once the workshop is completed today, and you'll receive additional information. One thing we have in here in the application and program guide this year that we didn't have in the past is we have a very extensive list of definitions in there. And these definitions are key program terms, and they can be used to further clarify our program priorities. I'm not going to go through all of them and read all these off, but just for you to note and to see these here, we will have definitions for things like community economic development. It's a term you'll see a lot in the application. So this will expand on that definition a little bit. And you can, we want to know about what issue your project is addressing, and an understanding that you're addressing and improving social issues and economic conditions. Asset-based community development. What are the assets in your community to improve your community, support your application? Collaboration. It's very important, and we like to see in applications that you are collaborating with other organizations. No one can do something on their own. Your partnerships make for a very strong, will make for a very strong application and help you be successful. We'll also find that it's important for community engagement that you take your community into the process, and you talk to the community, and that you certainly speak to underrepresented voices in your community as well. Community building or placemaking. Will your project strengthen the community among the individuals in the area that your project will serve? Does your project have public support? That's pretty self-explanatory. Is it the community you're serving support your project? Does it have broad support? And finally, we also have priority populations and priority areas, something that you'll look through here and will be part of your application. And again, particularly with priority areas, that will be where you're using our community progress indicators, which are developed by CDFA to support your application, and you will hear more information about that in the future. So at this point, we'd go into how the tax credit works, but I think this might be a good time if there are questions out there to take a, are there any questions at this point?
Hi, George. I'm not seeing any questions at this time, but it's a good reminder for folks. Please use that Q&A box to ask any questions you have throughout the presentation. As George notes, we will be pausing to take those questions. So certainly encourage you to use that Q&A box to share.
I've usually confused people by now, so I'm surprised there aren't any questions there yet.
Either they're so
That's
confused
okay.
they don't have questions, or you're crystal clear, and I'm going to go with crystal clear.
So at this point, we'll talk about how the tax credit works. The tax credit program, by way of introduction, it's CDFA's longest serving program. This particular tax credit program was established by the New Hampshire legislature in 1999, so we're now well over 20 years. It's a unique program that awards approximately $5 million annually to eligible nonprofits engaged in community economic development initiatives that show a high degree of community support, that build partnerships, and leverage other resources. This program is a proven example of how to achieve local priorities by leveraging public-private partnerships. There aren't a whole lot of states that have a similar program. I do believe there is one in Massachusetts, but I will say ours is better, of course. So, but there aren't a lot of states that have a tax credit program like this. The projects are awarded in a very competitive environment. Awards come with some conditions that are secured by a contract, but compared to other programs, say like a lot of federally funded programs, there's a lot less red tape involved. So it has parts where you have to do fundraising. That being said, there's a lot less red tape involved. As far as competitive, we oftentimes will receive double the applications we have to be able to fund, but it really depends on the year, and we encourage you to participate. So as I mentioned, the program is highly competitive. Since it was established in 1999, CDFA's allocation of tax credits to award has remained constant at $5 million annually. And because that's been at $5 million annually, inflation has eaten away at that amount. So it doesn't go as far as it used to. And demand has increased for these resources over time. So again, this is just an example of how competitive it is. For example, from 2015 to 2023, CDFA has received 321 applications for quality community-based projects within the tax credit and community capacity building programs, totaling almost $100 million in requests for tax credit equity, which is more than double the $45 million that were made available over that period. So as you can see, there's almost a 2-to-1 ratio here. So as a result, we were only able to fund 195 out of those 321 applications. And oftentimes with those requests, sometimes we'll lower the amount that they've received too. So the tax credit and how does it work? So here's how the tax credit works. The funding awards under the tax credit program are provided to qualifying organizations in the form of tax credit equity, typically over a 2-year period. Businesses with New Hampshire tax liability support awarded projects by purchasing the awardee's tax credits. So we award tax credits to an organization, you sell these tax credits to businesses, and they will purchase your credits. As a result, the organization receives a cash donation from the business, and the business receives a 75% New Hampshire state tax credit for their contribution. The donating business may apply that credit to their business profits tax, the business enterprise tax, or the insurance premium tax. The credit may be carried forward by the business up to 5 years, so they don't have to take the credit all at once. In addition, the portion of the donation, and remember we just said it's a 75% tax credit, the 25% that they don't get a credit for may also be eligible for treatment as a state and federal charitable contribution. So this really is a great product for businesses. A portion of the credit, 20% of the award to the awardee, supports the administration of the CDFA tax credit program, as well as additional statewide investments, technical assistance, data collection, research, and operations, which is why we can be effective with our engagement. CDFA does not receive funding from the general fund for the tax credit program, so that's what supports everything we do. The application, when you're writing it on the grants management system, will calculate your request, incorporating this percentage into the total funding request. For example, if your project needs $100,000 for implementation, the total tax credit request would be for $125,000. It's not as complicated as it sounds. And again, this is all taken care of on the grants management system as you're writing your application. As most of our awardees are nonprofits, this would mean that instead of asking a business for a direct cash contribution as you normally would with a traditional capital campaign, you will get the business to purchase the tax credits that are allocated to your nonprofit. The types of businesses that participate in the tax credit program include, but are not limited to, banks, insurance companies, manufacturers, automobile dealers, and small local businesses. It can be really any type of business. There's no minimum amount that will accept. So it ranges from big businesses to small businesses, and basically any business in New Hampshire that pays the business profits tax, the business enterprise tax, or the insurance premium tax. Here's an example of the tax savings for a business. Before I jump into the math, please note that this is an example of estimated savings. All potential donors should discuss their specific tax savings and implications from a professional tax advisor. So, for example, with a $10,000 donation, a business makes a $10,000 donation to your project. The business will receive 75% of that donation back as a tax credit, which you will see in the second line of the table. Additional deductions to the business profit tax for the contribution, $750 in this example, is calculated in line 3. So that brings the total state savings to $8,250. So remember, the original contribution from this donor was $10,000, but the actual net cost to this donor on $10,000 is less than $1,750. That means in the end that the net percentage cost to the donor is 17.5%, less than 18 cents on the dollar. Additionally, the business could receive federal income tax savings for a certain amount of that deduction. So it's a great deal for a business it can really help them extend their charitable giving, makes it go a lot further. But I think you would find when talking to a business that the biggest selling point of this is that a business that purchases tax credits is able to reallocate their tax dollars from the state general fund and invest directly into projects that benefit the communities they serve. So, this is what you'd say is you can send the money to Concord, or I have a project in Franklin. I can support that project directly in Franklin instead of sending it to legislature and having them decide where the funds go. So it's a great way to support a local project, and it's very easy for businesses to fill out when they're doing their taxes. So how does the process work? And this comes to the challenging part where Melissa will go through and you'll see little arrows pop up. So hopefully we'll get the timing correctly. The tax credit process is a cooperative partnership between the organization receiving tax credits and a donating business and CDFA. So the first step, CDFA awards nonprofits a tax credit allocation, and it's based on a state fiscal year. And for this year, it'll be state fiscal years 25 and 26. State fiscal year 25 starts on July 1st, 2024. So we make the tax credit allocation, and that starts on July 1st. Second step, the organization secures pledges, which is a promise from a New Hampshire business to donate funds to your project. Third step, the business will send its donation to CDFA on a chosen date. Now, one thing that you'd normally see is the donations will go directly to your nonprofit. The donations are sent to CDFA, and then as CDFA gets the funds, they will be allocated to the project. Step 4, once we get the donation, CDFA will provide the business with a tax credit letter, which documents the donation so that they can take the credit when they file their taxes for the state of New Hampshire. And then finally, funds for the project are to be released to the project once the fundraising has been completed. So once you've completed all your fundraising of the tax credit you received, and in accordance with your contract requirements. So there are certain things we like to see you accomplish before we start allocating funds to the project, but we will allocate the funds to the project after, basically after you've gotten all your donations.
George, I'm so proud of us for making it through that slide and the timing working out.
Oh,
So
I see. Are there questions this time?
there are questions this time.
I knew there would
So
be.
let's go back quickly to grant writing assistance. Those who are interested should reach out to you directly, and I'll include your email address in the chat for that. But George is the best contact person for grant writing assistance. And then a question about whether we can recommend grant writing consultants.
We have a list of grant writing consultants. I'm a little bit hesitant to say that we favor one consultant over another, but if we do feel that there's one that would be particularly suited to your project, we'll try and point you in that direction.
Great. Regarding how the tax credit works, how much do businesses know or understand the tax credit, and are resources given to grantees to help explain this process to the businesses?
There are a lot of businesses that know about the tax credit program. Obviously not all of them do, but we've had literally thousands of businesses in the state participate since this program has gone underway. Again, some of them I mentioned, the larger, a lot of the automobile dealerships, manufacturers, large businesses, businesses who are used to charitable giving. A lot of them know about the tax credit program. One way that we can find out, which I usually don't talk about at this point, however, our annual reports that CDFA publishes has a list of businesses that have donated to the tax credit program on that latest fiscal year. So if you took a look at our annual reports, that'll actually give you a list of businesses that will, that have participated in the program. We always we like to see new businesses. So there may be businesses that you already have a relationship with if you receive tax credits that we would encourage you to speak to. In terms of actually going out and selling these tax credits, once projects are awarded tax credits at the end, like the last week in June, we will have a tax credit 101 workshop, and the focus of the tax credit 101 workshop will be to educate the tax credit recipient on how to go out and to sell tax credits to businesses. It's a really good workshop. We have participants from we actually have businesses come in and talk to you about things to say and things not to say when you're approaching a business, and we'll have a consultant in there that sells tax credits to give you more insight on how to do that. So we don't send you out blind, and we help you out as much as possible.
Perfect. And then just clarifying, did the businesses have to be in New Hampshire? And I wonder if that's physically located versus having New Hampshire tax equity. Can you talk about that a little bit, George?
A business does not have to be located in New Hampshire. Any business that pays the New Hampshire business profits tax, the business enterprise tax, or the insurance premium tax is eligible to participate in the program. That being said, we have found that projects that have the most success are projects that talk to businesses headquartered in the state. A lot of businesses that are headquartered out of state have separate foundations that are not located in New Hampshire and are not familiar with the tax credit program. So you may have a harder run there. We would certainly encourage you to work with businesses that are headquartered in state and understand the tax credit program.
Great. And I know you'll get into eligibility, but just confirming that both municipalities and nonprofits qualify for the tax credit program as applicants.
That is correct. And again, we'll be going through that a little bit upcoming.
And I know we'll touch on this in the application workshop, but before applying, does the organization need a firm project budget or an estimated budget?
The firmer the budget you have, the better. It doesn't necessarily have to be final, but again, we have to make a judgment call, and that has to do with the capacity and the timing. And so the firmer the numbers you can have, the better.
Great. That's all the questions for now. Definitely keep them coming as we continue to go through this morning's presentation. All right, George, I'd jump into how the tax credit program works.
And as we talk about how the tax credit works, we had a question about who is eligible. So that was very timely. All of these applicants are eligible that you see on the screen, but most fall under nonprofits or nonprofit organizations involved in community development. Also, we are seeing more often now municipal applications as well. And a lot of those municipalities are working with local nonprofits. So again, if you are a nonprofit and you have a fiscal sponsor, maybe you're a very small nonprofit and you have a fiscal sponsor, we have guidance on that, which is more information that you'll receive. So if you're a small nonprofit with a fiscal sponsor, that's okay. We work with them, and we do have guidance for you to use. If you have any questions about falling under the other types of organizations, please feel free to give us a call after the workshop. We'd be glad to work with you. So if you're in an employee cooperative or another type of cooperative, feel free to give us a call. So our program objectives, CDFA's tax credit program is a competitive community economic development investment program. The program seeks to advance community economic development projects that show a high degree of community support, build partnerships, and leverage other resources. In accordance with RSA 162L, CDFA's tax credit funds are allocated to specific projects or programs that are of public benefit for a public purpose and can be reasonably expected to address one or more of the following objectives: to contribute to the development or redevelopment and economic well-being of target areas or target populations, to contribute to the economic development of the state, to increase or maintain threatened primary employment, and to provide affordable housing opportunities to low and moderate income people. So those things, they come right out of the originating RSA that established this program. As far as program guidelines, all CDFA program applicants are subjected to substantial programmatic and financial review and must meet the following conditions. The project must be of a public purpose and for a public benefit. Such benefits shall be quantifiable and must be presented to CDFA at the time of the application in a form described in the application. So again, you'll receive guidance with this application. You'll complete this application on the grants management system. And not only do we want you to complete the application, we want to see the backing data with it. If you're talking about a benefit, we want it to be quantifiable and in a way that we can understand it. So again, it's not just a narrative. We need backing documentation with that as well. Private industry shall not have provided sufficient capital required for the project. CDFA shall determine that its participation is necessary to the successful completion of the proposed project because adequate funding is determined to be unavailable in traditional capital markets or because credit has been offered on terms that would preclude the success of the project, which is to say, you'll have to demonstrate a financial need as well. If it's felt that you can obviously afford to be able to do the project on your own, this wasn't designed to replace assets that are already available to you. Again, in these days, the way prices have gone up and costs for projects have gone up, I know there's a great need out there for funding. Awarded organizations shall guarantee long-term community and targeted population benefit through legal mechanisms such as deed restrictions, equity limitation formulas, land leases, or other approved forms. This is simply to say we want some form of security on your project to ensure that you're going to do the project that you described in your application and that you'll maintain that benefit for up to 10 years. So we do that. We kind of call it a performance lien. And again, we'll use that or some other form to secure the benefit on the project. It's not something where we're trying to take something away. It's just something that we're trying to protect the investment with. So that's just something we can talk about when needed at the time. The project must provide evidence that it has a reasonable chance to succeed by providing evidence of funding commitments, public support, organizational capacity, and sufficient capital for sustained operation. We just want to see that once you start a project that you'll be able to bring it to its completion. Oftentimes we'll receive applications where they say, well, we're in a phase and we're in a quiet fundraising phase, which is fine. And that's encouraged. But if that's the case where you don't actually have the dollars, we'll want to see that you'd be able to bridge those funds until you have them. We basically, to fund a project, we want to see that it's a project that can be taken to its completion and that the resources are there to complete it. The project must conform to all applicable environmental, zoning, building, planning, and sanitation laws. So again, all your local building codes, etc. Project must have a plan to address energy efficiency and building sustainability in accordance with the 2024 CDFA energy policy. Our Director of Clean Energy Finance, Scott Maslansky, will address this in more detail in the next workshop, and we also have a little bit more detail on a slide coming up. Finally, the project must be interpreted by the CDFA Investment Review Committee to be within the scope of CDFA's defining legislation that we mentioned earlier and is outlined in the program objectives. So the project will be evaluated by CDFA staff and also of some members of our board as well. And they are called the Investment Review Committee, and ultimately the decisions will come through the Investment Review Committee. The application and program guide has additional information on objectives and guidelines for your review. Now, as far as the CDFA energy policy, I won't get into great detail to it at this point. Scott Maslansky will talk about this more in the application workshop, and we'll get into more detail on this. But just to know that CDFA aims to ensure that our investments support projects working to reduce future operating costs, improving occupant comfort and health, and ensuring facility durability. CDFA's energy policy supports tax credit applicants in identifying energy opportunities and potential additional funding and financing resources to implement those energy opportunities. The requirements apply to all CDFA applications proposing a physical alteration to existing energy systems, be it the building envelope, mechanical systems, or lighting, etc., or for new construction, which includes gut rehab. Your completed energy assessment or a clear plan and timeframe for completing the requirements must be included in your tax credit applications. In some cases, if your project does impact energy systems, we do have, or does not impact energy systems, we do have a waiver process. So there is a waiver process as well. And again, as I said before, the energy policy requirements and recommendations will be covered in much more detail at the application writing workshop on Thursday. So applications for the following activities are prioritized: projects that focus on place-based strategies and reinvest in underserved people and places; projects that encourage the development of effective and durable collaborations among multiple organizations to fundamentally impact communities and strengthen local economies; projects that use funding from multiple sources, including but not limited to banks, private donations, capital campaigns, and other CDFA grants and/or loan funds; places, underserved priority areas, where places with a high need is outlined in the community progress indicators, which measure socioeconomic well-being and community need at the municipal level in New Hampshire, including basic human needs, access to opportunity, and community sustainability and vibrancy. So there are, if you go into the application and program guide, again, that will get into more detail on funding priorities, and also the what we have added there in the definitions will also help with the funding priorities as well, and to help you understand that. Given how competitive the tax credit program is, while not expressly disallowed, the following types of activities may not be given priority when compared to other applications in the round: operating expenses, deficit reduction, or expenses already incurred. We generally would not fund a project where it's simply debt reduction. If the project has already been completed, it's generally not something we would consider if you've already incurred the expenses. The general operating expenses or your day-to-day operating expenses are not something that would have priority. Requests that are typically the responsibility of federal, state, or municipal funding sources. An example of that would be if your town was doing a water and sewer project, that would typically be the responsibility of the state and federal government. So requests that are typically the responsibility of other entities would not be a priority. Municipal projects that do not demonstrate a significant level of private enterprise. And in this case, private enterprise is defined by a project that shows planned economic benefit. So we would accept a municipal application, but obviously you need to be able to show the planned economic benefit of your application. The replacement of typical revenue sources. If you typically receive funds from the state or federal government or grants, again, we're not looking to displace other revenue sources. These sources would be to help you complete it, and they'd be needed resources to help you complete your project. Organizations possessing the financial capacity to complete a proposed project without a tax credit investment. Again, it's a matter of if we felt that your organization obviously has the capacity to complete a proposed project, then it may not be a priority. Capital campaign activities not explicitly tied to a specific project or program. We have received funds asking for capital campaign funds, but if it's just your regular capital campaign activity, that is not something that would be a priority. It would have to be specifically related to the project that you're applying for. Applicants with an active CDFA tax credit project. Some of you out there may have an active CDFA tax credit project already. You could certainly submit an application, but it may not be a priority as compared to an applicant who has submitted an application for the first time and does not have an active project. A request for large sums of funds compared to other projects in the same round and or available tax credit resources. CDFA receives a $5 million tax credit allocation a year, so we just ask that you use common sense. Don't come in and ask for $2 million in tax credits. That would take up a large chunk of our budget. So, again, there's no limit on what you can ask for, but we do ask that you use common sense. I would also note that if you're asking for a very large amount of funds, that is something that you'd have to go out and do the fundraising for too. So that's something else you need to take in consideration. So again, just use common sense for that. Finally, projects whose primary beneficiaries are not New Hampshire residents, individuals, and or the primary activities are not located in or benefit New Hampshire communities. The tax credit program is for projects that benefit New Hampshire citizens, New Hampshire individuals that take place within New Hampshire's borders. That doesn't mean that you can't benefit folks outside of New Hampshire borders, but we need to see that the focus is on New Hampshire and New Hampshire residents within the state of New Hampshire. So at this point, I just ask if there are any additional questions before we move on.
Absolutely. Thanks, George. So just confirming that tax credits is a once a year funding round for everybody. So this is the one-time application for 2024. And the next opportunity to access these resources wouldn't be until January through March of next year.
Yep.
And then also, can CDFA tax credit funds be used as a match for other programs like Northern Borders, say? And that might be better clarified for Northern Borders, but we have seen them in the mix of a funding stack for projects. Is that true?
Yes. Yeah. Northern Borders, CDBG, really LCHIP. There it just depends on the project, but we've been used as match for any number of other sources.
Great. So harkening back to how the tax credit works and coordinating with local businesses, someone's asking, although we're familiar with local businesses, is there a resource to get a list of entities in our zip code which pay New Hampshire business taxes?
That we haven't been able to do. Again, I would encourage you to take a look at our annual report, which has a list of businesses. It isn't split up by geographic territory, but I think you could find businesses in your area, and you could do the local research, and maybe there's a local chamber of commerce in your area that you could tap into. However, we don't have the data available to tell you specifically who's paying the BPT or the BET, unfortunately.
It might be fair to say that most all businesses probably operate in New Hampshire have some level of tax liability in one of those categories.
Yeah.
Has this program worked in conjunction with New Hampshire Housing's LIHTC program?
Yes, it has, and we've seen applications. Again, one of the emphasis of the tax credit program is to support affordable housing for low and moderate income people. So we have seen that done before.
All right. Is there a deadline for when the project must start in terms of a construction project?
There is no deadline as to when construction will need to start. However, we will ask you in the application what your timeline is, and it would be taken into consideration. You don't have to start construction immediately. We wouldn't expect that, but we will want to see in your application a timeline of when you intend to start construction.
Great. What is the average amount of award and what percent to the total project cost does the award generally obtain?
The awards, it can vary. I mean, they've been under $100,000, say up to 750,000, occasionally more, but that's a fairly rare occasion because it's a real big challenge to sell tax credits beyond that. So, but somewhere in that range is usually what we see. And in terms of the project, it really depends on the project itself. There are types of organizations, say someone previously was mentioning low-income housing tax credits that we just spoke about. Typically that will pay for most of a project in a housing project that's using low-income housing tax credits, and CDFA tax credits will be something to just fill in the gap in that case. However, there are other types of projects, let's say something like a homeless shelter that doesn't have access to other types of funding. And it may turn out that tax credits are the major funder of that project. So there isn't any set formula. It really depends on the project, and we try to take that into account when we evaluate them.
Great. One's asking, is there a public list of organizations that are looking for funding that can be accessed in order to approach regarding a group project? And that sounds like a nod to an organization looking to collaborate locally. And I'd say there's no list that we have, but definitely be in touch if you want to be making connections, as we could assist with that. Is that fair, George?
Yep.
And then a question about what happens if you do not sell all of your tax credits?
Oh, we do bad things. Just we're very mean, and we come back and send people out, and our goal is to work with everyone throughout the process. We have every confidence that you will be able to sell those tax credits. That's why we do our tax credit one-on-one workshop. We'll talk you through it, and always happy to help you. Just to know to work with you. One thing we're not looking to do are to take tax credits back. When we award the project, we will work with you, in order to be successful. I don't think we've ever taken tax credits back from anyone in the program. So.
Great. And that's part of our evaluation too, right? Is ensuring that capacity matches the request and ability to fundraise, which is why we ask for additional details around that in your application. All right. And then one last question coming in is, how do the businesses buying the tax credits have to be New Hampshire? Do the businesses buying the tax credits have to be New Hampshire based?
As we mentioned before, they do not have to be New Hampshire based. You would probably be better off with New Hampshire based businesses, because oftentimes businesses that are headquartered outside of New Hampshire oftentimes have different foundations whereby they have a different formula of making charitable contributions. Probably your best bet is to work with organizations located in state or headquartered in state that are familiar with the local issues and the local that are headquartered in state and are familiar with paying the BPT and the BET. That has definitely been the most successful route to go with.
Great. And just one last question about our community development block grant program and when those webinars take place. The next deadline for applications for that is at the end of January. So the next round would be in the spring. So those webinars would be taking place, I believe, in April or May. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, and again, you would oftentimes we do see applications that will utilize both community development block grant funds and tax credit funds.
And with that, I think we can turn it over to Molly to talk about capacity building.
Thanks, Melissa and George, and thank you everyone for being with us this morning. I'm here to talk to you about the Community Economic Development Capacity Building Program, which is a subset of CDFA's tax credit program and the next step in the evolution of what was the L5 and the RDC capacity program. So capacity building. Here on the screen, you'll see a list of different types of capacity that organizations are often challenged with. You may have additional ideas and thoughts about that. We encourage you to reach out. CDFA's strategic vision calls for deploying capital and place-based strategies that serve underserved populations, invest in underserved places, and fundamentally impact communities and strengthen local economies. CDFA capital is invested in both nonprofit organizations and cities and towns, as we've mentioned earlier. Our experience shows that for these investments to be successful, communities need several types of capacity: leadership, financial, grant writing, administrative expertise, project development, and program planning to support and sustain these investments. Capacity building can strengthen skills, abilities, and processes that nonprofit organizations need to thrive, be resilient, and sustainable. Capacity building support can help organizations successfully fulfill their mission and to help strengthen the economy and their community. Program objective. CDFA will award up to $750,000 to allocate over 2 years in the tax credit resources annually to support communities, cooperatives, and nonprofits in building their capacity to advance community economic development and infrastructure projects that will support the needs of vulnerable community members. CDFA seeks to support its partners and their ability to achieve their mission in their communities by funding strategic initiatives at critical junctures and backing solutions led or co-created by historically vulnerable community members. Next, we'll talk about our funding priorities. Applications for the following are prioritized: projects or collaborations that build the capacity of priority populations and organizations to implement community economic development solutions and traditional infrastructure projects. Groups and organizations that have been historically under-resourced and therefore have a greater financial need and a reduced ability to raise these funds from other sources. Examples of high priority community economic development capacity building program type projects include supporting networks, coalition, and collaboration among community economic development efforts to create meaningful impact and change for communities. The emphasis there is on collaboration. Organizations, projects, and initiatives led by and or directly benefiting priority populations. Place-based strategies that support priority populations, revitalize community, and strengthen local economies. We're also interested in innovative models of governance, initiatives, or organizations where innovation enhances community economic development. Efforts to engage the community broadly and deeply for community priority setting, identification of community assets, place reinvestment, and revitalization. That last one is really emphasizing the need to engage community, and we'll support those efforts. Similar to George's presentation earlier, we do have some limitations in a competitive funding round. Those are listed here on the screen. And in a competitive round, which our rounds are competitive, we will limit a priority given to operating expenses, deficit reduction, and costs already incurred, typical pre-development expenses, support of existing or underway organizational strategy, replacement of typical revenue sources, capital campaign activities that are not tied to your specific project or program, any primary beneficiaries or activities that are not based in New Hampshire. I know I'm going through these quickly. They're all in our application and program guide. Wanted to share a couple of project examples with you this morning, and Katie did a beautiful job, at the beginning of the webinar, sharing some examples. And I'd encourage you to look at the application and program guide, because we have listed there many examples from the past 2 or 3 years that we've funded, which really gives you a sense of the type of capacity building that we're interested in. Here, I'm just sharing a beautiful artwork from Positive Street Art. We supported Positive Street Art with a tax credit award this past year, and they're building capacity to build collaborations across the state of New Hampshire. Have also recently supported the Business Alliance for the People of Color, and they're deepening their capacity to move from an all-volunteer organization to hiring their first staff members. And they are an alliance that is working to strengthen the small business ecosystem for people of color across the state. As I said, other examples are in the application and program guide. We're also interested in organizations or sets of partners that have a community asset, such as a building, land, community space in place, and they need to deepen their community engagement or bring relationships together to figure out how to use this asset effectively and so that it has the greatest benefit for priority populations. We're interested in organizations and partners that have an asset or looking to acquire an asset and need to identify the right legal, financial, and governance structure to manage that asset. This is often common in an organization or a collaboration that is new and putting a project together for the first time. We're interested in a group that's looking to establish new leadership or governance structure for its organization or project to address a community economic development challenge. This is the idea where organizations may come together because there's a new challenge in your community or your economy, and you're trying to figure out how you're going to work together as a group and what structure or leadership do you need in order to do that. And we're also still interested in funding well-established organizations that are looking to deepen or build new partnerships with smaller organizations or emerging organizations so that both have the capacity to engage in traditional community economic development and infrastructure project development. Some program details to share with you. Similar to the tax credit program, eligible applicants include nonprofit organizations, community development corporations, cities and towns, and employee or other types of cooperatives. Applications will be submitted on the CDFA grants management system. In this funding round, you may apply for up to $150,000 over the course of 2 years, and that's a maximum of $75,000 per year. This is important to note in the community economic development capacity building subset of the program that CDFA will raise your first year of tax credits for you. And we also train you to raise your tax credits in the second year. And so we provide support in that second year so that you can do it on your own. We recognize that often emerging projects or emerging organizations is a real challenge to sell your own tax credits in the first year. And just would also like to note, this is an incredible way, as George mentioned, to build relationships within your local business community, is to sell tax credits and have that ongoing relationship in your business community. We understand, well, let's go ahead to next steps. That's fine. Thank you. As I said, please review the application and program guide on our resource hub. It has all the information that I've just shared. I know we've gone through this quickly, but you'll find it all there in writing. Highly encourage you, if you're thinking about a capacity building application, to consider grant writing support. Again, we recognize that new initiatives and emerging and growing organizations may not have experience or the infrastructure to do grant writing, and the grant writing support that we offer is really a great way to get started in on that type of fundraising. As was suggested earlier, it's up to $2,500 per award. There's no match required, and we can share with you a list of possible consultants, or you can use your own consultant. So please consider grant writing. As in all of our programs, we ask that you schedule a pre-application meeting. Those meetings will be with me this year, so I look forward to talking to you. Please please reach out, even if you just have an idea. If you're unsure what your capacity needs are, capacity building, as we saw on the first list, encompasses a lot of things. And sometimes emerging and new ideas are in capacity building. So please reach out so we can have a conversation about that. In their application and program guide, there's a list of past grantees and their projects. I encourage you to take a look at that to better understand the capacity building program. You may even see organizations or projects you're familiar with, and you may want to reach out to them and understand their experience in the tax credit program. With that, I think I'd like to thank you and turn it back over to Melissa, and happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thanks, Molly. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump the gun on that last.
It's okay.
So how does the capacity building program application intersect with the tax credit program application?
So when you come to us in the pre-application meeting, we'll help be clear whether you're applying for what we call the regular tax credit round or the capacity building. And it's a similar application on GMS, a similar application process, and a similar time frame and review process that we go through. But we will ask that you apply in either one of those applications, and we can help you figure that out.
Yeah, so they are two distinct applications and two
Yes.
distinct funding opportunities. Are capacity building grants the same as block grants?
They're not. Very good question. And so I think the best way to think about this is block grants or community development block grants, or you'll hear us call it CDBG. That is a funding source through HUD and the federal government, which is separate from capacity building. What we've shared today is a capacity building effort under the tax credit program. So this is a tax credit program project.
Great. And then we have one question. It seems to relate to one of the projects that you mentioned, the Plymouth Area Renewable Energy Initiative, or PARE, in terms of how does renewable energy specifically help vulnerable populations? And I'll just say that that project specifically is focused on providing renewable energy to low and moderate income individuals and ensuring that they also have access to that energy source. So that project was specifically focused on a priority population. I'm not sure if there's anything you'd want to add to that, Molly.
I think I would just add, Melissa, and please jump in here with me. If you're unsure whether your project is addressing a priority population, please come and talk to us. As we shared the list of priority populations, it's quite extensive, and oftentimes we can help identify where a project may be positively impacting a priority population, while maybe it's something that you hadn't been focused on or considered. So please come to us and we can talk through that.
Absolutely. No, that's great. And the process for scheduling a meeting, we'll actually be sharing that over email, as it'll be a link that you'll follow in order to secure a meeting. So we'll be sharing more on that following Thursday's webinar, the application webinar. And then just another note, we have a question about registration materials for Thursday. We'll be resharing links for those of you who might not have signed up for Thursday's webinar yet. So those will be forthcoming in an email follow-up that'll also include links to these slides, the recording, and the relevant materials that we've been sharing in the chat throughout today's presentation. And those are all the questions I see for now, but if you still have lingering questions, please continue to add them into the Q&A box as we wrap up today's presentation. We'll be remaining on for a few minutes just to answer any additional questions. But at this point, I think, Molly, I will turn it over to George to close it out.
Thank you, Molly. Just before we start again, there was a mention before of looking at what projects have been funded before, and I mentioned looking at our annual reports, which can be accessed on our website. That the annual reports also list the projects we funded in the past for regular tax credit programs and for community economic development. So that's a good place to see the types of projects that we funded previously. We don't necessarily have to see a project that's like one that's already there, but I think that's a good way to look. And you can also look on our website We have a list of projects currently raising funds. So, you know, there are a couple of places where you can look and find the information that you need. As far as key dates, today, January 16th, was our overview workshop, and this was an introduction to the tax credit program. If you are interested in applying for tax credits, we strongly recommend that you attend our workshop on Thursday, which is a tax credit application writing workshop. That will also start at 10 a.m. We'll get into depth as far as writing the actual application. It will be a great benefit to you if you are considering writing an application or even just thinking about it. Definitely sign up for this workshop. I think it will be a great help to you, and we'd love to see you again. On January 19th, our application will be made available on CDFA's grants management system. Again, you'll receive information on how to register on the grants management system and how to start that application. But on January 19th, that application will be made available on the grants management system. You will have until March 8th to submit the application. The application is due by 4 o'clock, and again, via the grants management system. The grants management system has no sympathy for people, so if it's at 4:01, it will not accept your application. So just a reminder, if you're writing an application, that it is due by 4 p.m. In March through May, we'll be doing application evaluation. That is when we will be reviewing what you have submitted on the grants management system, and in addition to that, they'll be back and forth with the projects who submit their application, and we'll also be we'll do an on-site evaluation as well to visit your application and really find out more about what your project is about, to meet with you in person. On the week of June 10th, we'll make tax credit award notifications, and for those who are successful in receiving awards, we'll be doing an awards presentation on the week of June 17th. That's where we get everyone together here locally, and we do we have a whole ceremony to award the applications, and it's a really fun time, and you get to meet the other folks who are receiving tax credits as well. And then on the week of June 24th, we have our tax credit 101 workshop, which I mentioned earlier on in the presentation, and that is there specifically to help those awarded tax credits, to provide them with information and resources on how to go about selling those tax credits. So this is the schedule we have upcoming, and again, we try to be as helpful as possible, and we really look forward to your participation in the program. So as far as next steps, our next step is, if you haven't registered already, you will get the link to register. So attend the application workshop. This will require applicants to detail their specific project, describe the extent to which it aligns with program objectives, and provide other pertinent information that will help CDFA determine the applicant organization's capacity to complete a successful project. An outline of the CDFA's tax credit program and CED applications can be found in Appendix A of your application and program guide. So if you want to see the questions that we're going to be asking and what we'll be talking about on Thursday, when you do receive the email, and if you don't already have the application and program guide, that will give you an outline of the questions that we'll be asking. And in step 2, request a pre-app meeting, which was also mentioned. If you have a project that you think would be a good fit for tax credit or capacity building programs, we strongly urge you to consider scheduling a pre-application meeting with CDFA staff to discuss your potential application. We will follow up with instructions on scheduling these meetings in the coming week. So the meetings will start taking place, they'll start taking place next week. So we'll be able to start with that right away. And again, if there are any final questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Great. So confirmation that the capacity building grants timeline is the same as the tax credit program. So all of those deadlines also apply to capacity building. So you will need to submit your application by that March deadline.
It's a different application, but other than that, the process is exactly the same.
Yep. For those of you who are registered for Thursday's webinar but might have a conflict that's come up, Similar to today, we will also be sharing the presentation slides as well as a recording to that webinar. So if you do have a scheduling conflict for Thursday but are interested in the content of that application webinar, please do register. That will be the best way to ensure that you receive all of those relevant materials in that recording. And those are the questions that I'm seeing currently. George, I know you have one project that you wanted to wrap up with. So if anybody has additional questions, please drop them in as George, do you want to share some information? I have a feeling that this video is not going to work for me on this slide as well, but maybe you could just give folks an understanding of what they're looking at here.
Sure. What you're looking at here is a project that we funded in 2019. The Aviation Museum of New Hampshire was awarded $150,000 in tax credits to initiate a student plane build program. The Aviation Museum, which is located in Manchester, partnered with the Manchester School of Technology and a nonprofit called Tango Flight of Texas, a nonprofit organization that inspires students to pursue careers in aviation, to build and sell a full-scale flyable aircraft, which was constructed by Manchester high school students. And it was a very scary thought when we first mentioned that. People would say, high school students are building a plane? Well, they are, and they did. Funds from the tax credit allocation were used to purchase 2 kits to build these airplanes. So since we funded that project, a lot has happened. The first plane was completed and flown for the first time in 2023. They've had 100 students that have taken part in the program since its inception. A lot of the students will go on to take careers in the aviation industry. And in fact, one participant who was a 2023 graduate has had no interest at all in or family connections in the aviation industry prior to participating in the plane build program. Went on to obtain her own private pilot's license on her own. She's enlisted in the U.S. Air Force and is now a C-5 crew member based in the Westover Air Force Base in Springfield, Massachusetts. She also co-piloted a plane out to an EAA Air Venture show in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and was featured in a New Hampshire Chronicle segment. The second plane is now well underway, and they expect to sell the first plane sometime before the end of 2024. And they will use these proceeds to build plane number 3 at the Manchester School of Technology. And even better, at this point, the Aviation Museum has issued an RFP to expand the program to other schools in New Hampshire, with plans to hopefully start a program at this point in Lebanon and also in Farmington. So this is a really great video if it will start, although it might not. This was a great program which had elements of community development and economic development, created jobs. So, you know, and these are really the type of things that shows you can really be creative with the tax credit program. So if the video will start, I hope that you'll be able to watch it. I've seen that look on your face, Melissa. It sounds like it's not going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen for me today. But we will share this as well as the Neighbor Works of Southern New Hampshire video, and definitely encourage you to take a look at them, because they are both really critical projects and really innovative projects, and demonstrate, I think, truly the breadth of the tax credit program and what it can fund, which is really exciting. So, you know, funding critical elements like affordable housing, but also really innovative and unique programs like this one. So we do have a couple questions. And I believe this is in reference to GMS. If you registered to try to apply for a capacity building grant, you would use the same user ID and password for the tax credit fund. So once you're registered for our grants management system, that's the same user ID and password that you would use to start an application for either of those programs or any other CDFA programs. And then also, again, just confirming that we'll get you those video links. And other than that, I'm not seeing any additional questions at this time. We are at 11:31 and we promised an 11:30 end. So if there are no additional questions or anything else, George, that you want to share, I'd say we close out today's program.
Only that we hope to see you again on Thursday for the application workshop.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Enjoy the rest of your day.